And then I gotta zoom in, I gotta find it.
Where's Dave? Is he,
We probably won't see Dave again.
Dave is no longer.
I
Here, you
know.
go there.
Oh, he's completely left the school
He's got 3 more days officially, he doesn't have to be here anymore.
and then he's
He's
going on.
going to Elmhurst.
We'll probably touch on that briefly tonight.
He's taking a picture.
Okay,
He has to come on the 27th to our meeting. I gotta find this.
who will be the, work?
I had a happy start to
We're gonna discuss it tonight. We'll discuss it tonight. We don't.
No.
I volunteer.
Today is 6/26, right? Okay, that's why I can't find it.
You want me to find the code for it?
I got it right here. I was just, I was looking for it.
Well, you and I need to get together. We have other connections we discovered. See?
I wonder if some people felt so strong.
I can't find it.
Where they're going to work there.
That's both of them.
Oh, yeah, I haven't heard anything like that, no.
All right, so the mic going now? Yeah, mute, muted, video started.
You're a landlord.
Yeah, video started.
Okay, so at 6:02, I'm gonna go ahead and start this meeting of the Daniel Building Advisory Committee, June 21st. We have a forum of board members. I'm Clayton Cargo, the chair. I've got also,
Molly Gleason, the clerk.
Yes, the comment.
we're not expecting Tim, who's unavailable. We're not expecting Dave Toll, who's unavailable. We have 2 members of the administration here.
Sarah Welch, elementary principal.
Sean McNamara, Facility Director.
And then I have 3 members of the community plus Lynch, who's in and out. Sadie?
Katie White.
Mary Beatty.
Rob Ballavey.
All right, so we're gonna work with a lighter group today. And this may be a short meeting, because here we are. So some of the first things that, there are no additions and changes to the agenda you guys know about? Okay. So one of the first things that, we want to talk about is some updates from the school, from the June school board meeting. And we have some updates about the library plans and about the lighting plans, and then a pending discussion on the air handlers. We don't have, any, I haven't seen any quotes yet at the board level for as of yet, and we may not this session. And then summer break for this group based on availability. And then also we'll talk about Dave Schilling here just for a moment. So I'll start with that one. Dave Schilling got poached. So Dave Schilling became available. He had a contract, it's sitting there. They called him from LI and they said, come over and interview. We have the technical education advisor position available, and he interviewed for it. And you guys have all sat down with Dave. If Dave will sit down and he'll talk to you about what he wants to do with kids, and you don't hire him, that makes you the idiot. And so they sat down with him, and that's that, right? So they go.
They're very lucky.
They're very lucky. They're very lucky to have him, and we're very lucky to have had him for the 5th year here.
Yeah.
And where that leaves us with Daniel Works is we have a program that has started that really wasn't supervised this past year because Dave spent so much time back as the principal, but he did get in place 3 teachers that are new. One that is provisional, that's a cooking teacher that's well liked, a new shop teacher that's doing something, and then Nick White's in here for a 2nd year for Daniel Works. We cannot hire another administrator for a couple of reasons. The first of those is administrators get hired on 2-year deals, not 1-year deals. And we only have 1 year of runway available to even offer to somebody. So we would be looking for somebody, and that's an administrative level position, and as it was written. And that person also has to be a technical education specialist. So that position will have to remain unfilled because we don't have anything really viable to offer, and we're past the hiring section. And so what we're gonna be counting on is that Natalie Holloway can come in and Conrad Holloway. I hope not all of you missing. Oh God, that's the one that's missing, isn't it? Pardon me, everybody. Natalie Conway, Natalie Holloway. Bottom of the ocean. So anyway, the new upper school principal is she just stepped into something bigger, but Nick White's is good at his job. And the new shop teacher is well liked.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have met Suzanne, but she's really lovely, and she's really she's excited to teach, and she's got a provisional license and she's ready to go. And so there's going to be 3 parts of this program that exist, and we'll see what we can come up with on this. But the programming is there. The programming is high school programming. It fits under the role of high school education, so it can be supervised. And we were gonna have a make or break point at the end of this year anyway, when the grant money ran out for specifically Dave's position. And if you come to the meeting on next Tuesday, he'll be there, and one of the things that he will tell you is the way, if everything ran exactly right, he was working himself out of a job anyway. Because there was no runway for his position. And then if you flipped it around, and he said to us last year, before this board met in March of last year, I just want to hire a new administrator to run this other program, but I'll stay the principal, we would have told him no.
Yeah.
So we made the position to keep Dave Schilling. And in making the position to keep Dave Schilling, we were lucky in that year to keep Dave Schilling. Dave Schilling is now leaving. I'm sad. That's like, this is where I'm gonna tell you I am with this. I'm sad. We're gonna manage, but I'm sad. And
You're sad.
yeah, I'm saying, right? Tara, is this your fourth year at this? So she's filling half those shoes already. She's been filling half those shoes for years. I'm not worried about the school, but no more Dave.
Yeah.
No more Dave calling me in the middle of the night. Hey, I'll do that. What are you up to? Okay. So that is that. Now, with the lighting plans, we talked about this a lot in this committee with the lighting plans. We have to go to LEDs. And it was one of those things that, and so we, at the last meeting, Sean had one full quote and one quote from somebody who wouldn't do it, and this seems to be the way of the world now, is I'll give you a quote, but I won't take the work, so don't pick me. And we got a lighting quote to change out every single fluorescent in this building, ballasts and all, for LEDs. And then in places where that would be too much light, like in this library, then to fill in the ceiling with a new ceiling. Was that correct?
No, not entirely.
Okay, we want to explain?
Where there's a drop ceiling in in classrooms, and they have the 1x4 fluorescent fixtures, the 1x4s are coming out. And 2x2 panel lights like it in the hallway are gonna be replaced. So it'll be a drop-in fixture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which actually is less expensive than.
Less expensive and I believe we got more of a rebate on those 2x2s than we did on the retro kits.
Good.
And they've already started.
Right, and then we're gonna get this work going. It's with unrestricted funds, which we have $114,000, something on the neighborhood. We're going to be chasing grant money as we go on, and that's essentially the way you do this, is you take the grant money as you go on and hope to recoup it. That's worked a couple of times. That worked with the wood chip boiler, and that's worked with a couple of other things. And so sometimes you can get them, you claw back some money from the state, and then the job ends up cheaper than it was. So that's that one. The next one is the library plans. And this is where in the school, we can be more creative with high school kids than we can with preschool kids. And so there was a lot of talk at the last meeting about building a four-room high school building. But with high school kids, you can be more creative than you can with the heavily regulated preschool classroom rules. And so one of the ways that we're going to do this, I'll have Sarah just briefly explain the library plan.
Yeah, so there's a lot of shelving and things torn out over there. Our librarian, pathways coordinator and one of our high school English teachers came up with a plan. Created a whole proposal, did it all, have a temporary wall, will be 8 foot high to create a second classroom over there, because a lot of the high school. There's already a lot of high school classes being held there, or they come out of Rose Modry's room because her English class is bigger, so they're gonna have that space and then buy some more modern shelving to replace the shelving that's coming out right there. And it actually, capacity wise, gives us more shelving than we're using, and it's gonna be sturdier and designed for libraries with that, those shelves at the end of their life. So, yeah, so we're very excited to add a space without triggering any renovation, anything, so.
So in the face of our situation, we're just trying to be creative with our face, and that was one, and that it was come up with the librarian and with the principal here, and imagine you were involved in that as well, getting rid of some of these shelves, and you work with summer crews on that.
We're gonna get rid of them.
Okay. So that's that one. So lighting plans, library plans, the air handlers, that's probably gonna go out to either a loan or a bond. We don't know yet, hopefully just a loan. The superintendent's gonna get us some numbers, through Sean. Hopefully we have some of those soon. We don't have them yet. But if we can replace the air handlers that we have now and move the air better, that's a positive step we can take because probably we're not gonna be able to make any big progress on this building in the imminent future. So if we can do better with the air, it's better for every kid in here. And so we're waiting to hear on that. We might hear on the 27th, we might not, right? We're waiting on numbers.
I have a question for, well, Sean's here.
Here.
So say 5 years from now, we decide to take down the 37 building and we put in the air handlers, how much money are we losing essentially by putting new money into an old building? Because the air handlers aren't part of that
Right.
building.
So the 37 building specifically, what I was asked to get was a 1-for-1 swap. And that's EFU5 that serves building 37, and it's down in the basement.
Yeah,
So it feasibly, it can't be replaced in the basement, so everybody that's gonna be giving us bids is bidding on putting that unit outside on the side of the building and piping into it from the outside. So we'd be able to save the unit.
Yeah,
Okay.
reusable.
so if that happened, if any one of these segments wasn't here, we could move the units. And it wouldn't be, we're not like $100,000 necessarily in terms of the investment we're making.
Well, ideally, you could move the unit, but it would all depend on the square footage of a new building or whatever, they're configured to certain size areas for air changes per hour. So the ones that we're gonna be replacing will be sufficient for this facility, but if you were to add or take from it, that changes that air change number a little bit, might increase or decrease the size of the unit.
Is it fair to say that to a degree, this is bad money after, good money after bad?
This
we have to spend?
This is a good idea.
Okay.
I think Molly might answer your question too, like I think it would, if we do end up building something on the road, it would behoove us to say. Hey, we have these units, they're only this old, can we look at moving them over? For sure, and the answer might be yes, and it might be no, but.
Yeah.
I think that would definitely be part of that process.
Do these new ones have a 30-year lifespan?
I don't know, yeah, I haven't seen the specs
No
on
idea,
it,
right?
but I would imagine it, at least that.
And no internal connections are being replaced or nothing new is going on, it's just the air handlers and not anything internally in terms of connections and.
It's the air handlers will be using the same electrical feeds that are feeding them now, but we will be adding controls to the units. It's almost unheard of to put in a unit these days without controls on it so that we can monitor.
Yeah.
The airflow, the returns, everything. We can turn them on and off during 1 hours when there's nobody here. Turn them on if we need them on for a weekend or something.
And there's a huge, I talked about, there's a huge electricity savings, because
Right.
that's something that went up astronomically, since they did back online.
Yeah.
And now they just run all day,
Yeah.
so.
100%. These
Yeah.
new units will have what's called a variable speed drive on them, so they can slow the motors down or speed them up as necessary. Where what we have now is just you sitting in your car with the gas just in,
Right, yeah. That's good.
basically.
That's good, but they're portable, essentially.
Yeah.
They can be moved, that's good.
They can be moved, yes.
Yeah, I would agree. You have to bring in a crane.
Right.
Right.
Not
Small crane.
Hmm. Right,
All right, any questions about that? So that's the business we were bringing you from that board meeting. In addition, we had the superintendent, Sarah asked the superintendent to ask the early education coordinator to go down and look at the building and the North Danville School Building
Oh,
for its viability, and it is not viable. I've got a lengthy list of why, but I can show you that the superintendent wrote, and he wrote it about 1,000 words a second. And before he wrote it, he said, why am I doing this? Clearly, this building is occupied and this building is in poor repair. And I said,
it's got a lot.
I know. I didn't- And so that's not a possibility. And that one's not, we've had Dave Schilling was in the community center for the library. It was also not a possibility, so where we're creative, where we can be creative is not with preschool kids. And preschool kids have to be housed somewhere on this system.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of our realities. All right, and another thing that was discussed with the superintendent was summer break for this group. We talked about his employees, talked about Sean's got 3 schools to work with here to try to get back online for next year, get ready. Sarah, again, doesn't work here in the summers and lives in Lindenville. She'd be coming over here just to volunteer. I don't have another principal, so we have not having administrators in the group. Tim's not available at all. That's it. The word from Tim is I am not available for these meetings in the summer at all. I teach school. Don't count on me. Don't check with me.
Yeah.
Dave works Wednesdays and Thursdays. Dave Toll works Wednesdays and Thursdays at the hospital till 7. So we're probably not, it would be difficult to have a forum every weekend. So what we're hoping is take a break from these through the summer. And then we pick back up in the fall and hopefully the group's going to be re-energized. We're hoping that the state is going to have some meetings this year about the states of the building and about the work they've done, gathering up what the status of all the buildings in the state are. We're going to see if there's some data that can be found that might help us, maybe generate some revenue out of this. But I mean, the current system really does pay a lot if you can just take out the loan. As you can see, a lot of other people here. There's a stalwarts, count yourself as stalwarts if you're here. I think you've been to every one of these since we started, you've been to every one of these since we started, plus a few. And so we're probably I'll try to reconvene sometime in September, if you guys think that's okay.
Sounds good.
And then Tim says that when we reconvene, that we mostly need to think about master plan. We mostly need to think
Yes.
about if whatever we do,
Tim said strategic plan.
strategic plan for what we want to be and a master plan for what we want to build. So that we don't just build another structure.
Yeah.
And we just stack a building that can't be added on to, or that doesn't benefit us now and can continue to benefit us later.
But we did have some good observations or ideas at our last meeting with the groups that broke out.
I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I think
The
the
minutes.
I did. They don't know. They don't know.
one that grabbed me was the idea that if we build a new building, that it would be in a spot for a master plan of a whole new building in 50 years or less. Okay, so that would mean it wouldn't be connected with the existing building.
Right.
And I kind of brought up the concept of that would be great for a lot of the youngsters that are young, but then it was brought up to me, well, they have to eat, and below zero, or, it'd be hard for that age a group, to get over at the school from a remote building. And then it was brought up that perhaps within the existing school, we could change classrooms, but for that young age group, you see, and to put the high school students in a new building for maybe a few classrooms. That would be state of the art for that age group. That would maybe attract others other schools over into that program. And that's what I ended up with as a thought from our discussions.
Okay.
So, but that's an idea.
Yeah, it's almost like we need to build this in and this in, and then
The middle.
later fill in the middle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and I heard one idea from Dave at one point that you build the preschool building out there, but you put 4th and 5th graders in it, or something, or put 3rd and 4th graders in it.
Middle
In the
school.
meantime,
Oh,
Middle school.
or
Right.
Yeah.
that's an idea. too. Oh, we have lots of ideas.
yeah, it's money we're gonna need.
Explore.
One of the things that I've been trying to get is information about the old school, the 37 building. And the reports, so much of everything, all the facility, electrical, I think, the HVAC, if there is even an AC in that unit. I don't know.
There's no AC in the building at all.
There's, I think the fire alarm, it said it had to be completely rewired, which, you know, kind of brings up the question, like, how much, you know, can that new unit work into what's existing there? But, if everything's at the end of its life or beyond it, some of it is that we're kind of working on very borrowed time. And I hate to see us get into a position where we have to dump money into something that it's the wrong place to be putting it. That, you know, I think it's nice to be able to defer, you know, until this fall. But if these things, I was led to believe this was kind of an urgent matter, and perhaps it's not. I don't know,
But
maybe.
The air is the most important thing, and the energy efficiency is the most important thing. Space for preschool kids, we don't have enough space for preschool kids, but we can't add on to this building, and we can't build anywhere because we don't have anywhere to build and we don't have plans. So, I think that one of the things that we need to consider doing is having another needs assessment done, and then to have the people that come and say, and we don't have any money. Like, let them know that we don't have any money, we can't take down the walls in any of these places, and see how we can get code compliant without removing the walls of these buildings, because it's true, the buildings aren't gonna fall down.
Well, you've got
Not tight.
structural with the. With the 89 construction
In
and
the
structural
gym, there are some structural cracks.
in the gym.
But that can be done as structural work, I would think, as opposed to the building that comes down.
It's not, I know.
Right,
Oh,
the
yeah.
37 building, there's cracks in the foundation, there's cracks everywhere. So we might abandon that stuff in place if we can, but we don't know what we are capable of doing unless we have somebody come back in and engineer another assessment where we say that in this assessment, rather than what are all the things we have to do to get code compliant and to have these buildings work for another 30 years, let's say, we could. And I don't think we can because they're the wrong size, but we may have to. But we need to leave the walls up. We want to abandon everything that's in the walls.
Yeah.
And then if we can abandon everything that's in the walls, what can we do with that? But that's a money spent that we may have to consider.
Yeah, I guess the other, you know, is, you know, if something new would have to be added on, and the question is what can we afford, or what will the town approve? And we are, you know, we know the extreme they won't do, but, you know, where's the cutoff that we can be working with? I mean, that's a huge difference. And I sort of feel like we're trying to build a house and we don't know how much we can spend.
Right.
Right, so if
And-
we spend 25 million, we spend 40 million.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I can spend as much as you want, but.
Well, I.
Well,
And then it comes back to like the community input piece, where. And I know I talked to Katie and Mary about this, if we had work groups over the summer, there could be some information gathering that we could do outside of the board. Or the building committee meeting that. I think gathering, I don't know if we're at the point now to do, I was mention the survey, but if we do some sort of. Community information gathering and research to get the data and reports that we need. To then jump off in September. I just don't know either in terms of the community,
Yeah.
what is our max limit? What is the point when they just say no? What's manageable, and that's where I feel like we really need to have some guidance. in terms
Well, I
of-
guess the other is just if you know, they say, okay, 10 million's okay. I mean, how much can you do with 10 million?
Right,
Yeah,
right,
That's, you know.
Right.
and-
but that would be helpful to know.
Yeah, I mean, because we'd be spending our time really kind of focusing more
Yeah,
on a
on what
40
we
million,
do.
and they go no way.
right.
Yeah,
You know, it's sort of like we wasted our time when we're looking at the 70 million.
yeah,
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily
We
a
did.
waste of time, but
It's.
We learned a lot from it. Yeah.
We know all the things that are wrong, and we know that we can't afford to fix them all.
Yeah.
And we know, as a result, though, how, you know, how it is funded, and that we only have to pick up 2/3 of it. Or 1/3 of it, but the people that pick up the 1/3 of it are only less than 1/3 of us.
Right.
And so what we know is that we have to make it reasonable for the people that, oddly enough, make the most money in the town. And then really people in the middle of that also, between 90,000 and 130,000.
Well, yeah, I guess the other is just, I don't know that the state of Vermont, what they're gonna do if all the schools that need these repairs. It all goes in each individual budget, and to think that we can pass this all on to the state of Vermont, I mean. We're gonna end up paying through another means. I mean, saying we only are gonna pay 1/3 is kind of a misnomer. Because we all pay taxes to the state of Vermont, whether it's an
In one way.
income tax every time you buy a car.
4 ways or another, we all pay taxes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sales tax, I mean, it's gonna bite us. And to say, for example, that just because your residence is here, the non-residential people. Or the non-homestead people. Those are also people that own property here in town. I mean, like my brother Marty. Owns a store, but he's a resident, he's not a non-resident. So he indirectly would pay through, so that other category that you say is non-resident, it's a lot of residents.
So, yeah, non-resident in business, but they can't be affected by what we do in terms of just, that goes into the big.
Right.
Right now, everybody in Danville,
But
every non-resident in business in Danville is chipping into the Burlington School.
Yeah.
As part of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, this is the same thing, everybody pays for it somehow, we're all paying.
But I guess what I'm saying is to say, oh, we're only gonna pay, we only pay for 1/3 of it. Kind of like that's like, well, I go, well, gee, I don't think so.
We, in our budget, so, you know, I'll add the words in our budget, what we have to pay back, we have to pass on to the property tax rate on a year-to-year
The
basis.
residential.
The
people.
residential property tax rate is 1/3.
Yeah, and then.
Hey,
You know,
Clayton, this is Bruce. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I've been listening. I'm actually at a grandson's baseball game. So, everyone has valid points. But I agree with you about not meeting again until September, because from past experience, I can remember dealing with the Act 46 situation. Nobody was going to show up. I'm sorry for the noise, but nobody was going to show up during the summer. We tried having informational meetings, in Cabot, Twinfield, Danville, and nobody showed up. I think I've told this story before. We had one in August of that year, and I had the janitor set up like 100 chairs, and we had like 10 people show up. So I know that we need to keep chugging forward as best as we can, but unfortunately we are at a point where summer's here, summers are short in Vermont. We haven't had a lot of interest anyway, until we put forth something before the community and say, this is what we're proposing, please vote yes, or if you agree with it, if you don't agree with it, vote no. We're not going to get the people involved. So I'm just saying, I agree with you about after tonight. I think we should not worry about meeting again until September. And that's just not for my benefit. That's especially for the people that work at the school, people like Sarah, people like Sean, other administrators. I just think that it's only fair to them to let them enjoy their summer, and we'll reconvene in September and see where we can go from there. If we can do some work on the side in the meantime, that's great, but we're not going to get people to an informational meeting between here and September. I can guarantee you that.
I think we don't have to meet during the summer, but I don't think it's true that we can't get people to engage with this, like, during the summer. I'm hesitant to suggest this, I don't want to over volunteer myself, but we could set up a booth at the Danville Fair and have some information about what's been going on and have someone to talk to people. I think gaining some perspectives from other people in the community. Even, I know Bruce did this once, like went out and talked to some people in the community, rather than asking them to come to an informational meeting, find them where they are at, share some information and get some ideas. I would love to be able to, like Mary said, what are people willing to spend? I don't know if it's possible for us to take the tax impact that we got from Mark for that big number and like cut it in half.
She said, yeah.
You can adjust the
Yeah.
tax rate, it's like. there's
Would
ways
that
to
work?
figure-
Would it be like
Yeah.
a one-to-one
It's a
comparison?
one-
Like
yeah.
if we were like, hey, if it was 35
Yes.
instead of 70.
Yeah.
Here's what your tax impact would look like. And just, I'm not asking for like a formal vote, but get some ideas from some different people of what would that mean to them? Would they be okay with that? Is that still a no way?
Right,
That information to me would be helpful, because like Mary said, that we're thinking about all these things we could do, and we have no idea what the town is gonna say yes to, rather than going down a whole nother year of trying to make plans and then presenting it to them and having the town be like, nope. Try to get some information from different people than have been in this room.
Yeah.
And there are ways we can do that without having meetings. We could send out an online survey. Maybe no one will respond to it, but it's also not that hard. It would take 5 minutes to make.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge commitment of time.
yeah.
Setting up a table at the Danville Fair would be less fun, but we could do it.
That would be a great way, or making call, even just making cold calls. I mean,
Yeah.
Everybody calls 10 people in the town and.
Yeah, or sees them
you know,
somewhere. I mean,
Yeah,
we see 20 people at a baseball game
Right.
tomorrow night. Like, we could talk to some people and see what they think.
yeah,
There's, we also talked about last meeting, getting more information about demographic trends.
Oh, yeah.
That's something that someone could do over the
Yeah.
summer. That doesn't need to be a part of a meeting, but could be done if anyone has time. I'm not sure exactly how to look into demographic trends, but
well, there
I'm
is
sure we
that,
could figure it
there's
out.
that group that I sent to you and Mark, and that, and Mary and Rob know about too, that they do, it's a nonprofit, and they do these reports for schools. You have to be a member, and it has to come from the superintendent in terms of an inquiry about the membership.
Yeah.
So Mark would need to be the one to look into that in terms of what is a membership cost, but there's, what is the school district, Mary, that's the one, was it Orleans? That's part of it?
Orleans,
There's
Winooski.
Yeah,
If you look
Winooski.
at the Winooski website, you'll see a lot of their reports are on their new look, and it was generated by, I can't think of the,
It's a
I
long
honestly keep
acronym,
forgetting.
it's Northern, it's a like NES, there's a long NESC something, but it may be a lower cost option instead of hiring a consultant to
Yeah.
do. But we're gonna need, if we're doing a strategic plan, we're gonna need demographics,
for sure.
financial projections, and that we could possibly get that information from that group if Mark wants to and is willing to send an inquiry just to see what it
Yeah.
costs.
Yeah, that's the big thing. We don't
Yeah,
have
getting
any
that
idea what the
stuff
cost is.
Started over the summer would really help us so that we're not starting that in September.
And I would be willing if Rob,
can-
Mary and Katie and
Yeah.
Melissa or
Yeah.
whoever wants to do it, I would, even just a phone call or
Yeah.
a Zoom
I'm
call.
willing
or-
to talk to people
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
just get, I mean, I know it's informal, but we could get some informal ideas about. Or we could get more formal ideas if we wanted to make a survey.
right.
I mean,
Let's begin with the informal. And if we don't get much response, then go formal.
Yeah, so I have some informal data, you know,
Yeah.
I'm sitting on some informal data that people tell me, and one of the people that told me one thing is John Blackmore. When he told me he's not coming to any more of these meetings.
Yeah.
And he said, you're never gonna get anywhere by continuing to have these meetings. He said, you have to figure out what you're willing to ask, you're gonna
Yeah.
fix the school or not, ask for it, the town says no, then it's on them. If you never ask, it's never on, it's always just stuck on you.
Yeah.
So I think we need a new needs assessment to not take the walls down before I think we need a number before we have an idea.
Haven't we decided that we're not taking the walls down? Like, it feels like the decision
But
is
we
that.
have no data about what it costs to not take the walls down.
That's what we keep coming back to. If you
We
don't have any
no
numbers, we're-
data. And what, if you say, we're gonna take the walls down, we have tons of data. If you
Right.
say, we're gonna revamp the whole building and build a new building or a thing, we have extensive data.
But if we
But
do
once you
that,
say we're not gonna take the walls down, we're back to no data. So does it make sense to spend $20,000 and go back to the company that everybody hates because they're engineers, and they're definitely bad guys because they're engineers. And then ask them to come back in, do another needs assessment with the understanding that we can't afford to take these walls down.
But they did, part of that 80 million is their renovation assessment. Which was 30 million to fix this entire
32.
building.
The 80 million is for a new building and this building is
Sorry,
abandoned.
Make good.
The make good was 32 million, taking the walls down.
Right,
But what they did is to use a standard estimate approach. And that assumes that you demolish walls
Mhm.
and you excavate the slab or you jackhammer that to get out certain things. And if you leave all that stuff in place and you surface mount a lot of stuff, that would be a lot less, and that is in those estimates.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is how deep did that 32 million?
All the way. That 32 million was back to the studs, back
And
to the
then-
concrete wall.
Yeah.
What I would wonder from them, from another needs assessment, this building is not well laid out, like, no one's shocked by that fact at all. So would going and being able to lay it out more efficiently actually give us more space? I
But
think
how do you
probably
do that without
yes.
tearing down the
Yeah.
walls?
You can't.
I don't know.
You can't.
Well, but if you're tearing down, you're gonna have to tear down some of the walls, just to
Yeah.
redo electric and stuff like that, like there's.
No, that's
not-
what we're saying. We're not gonna tear down any of the
Not
walls.
taking down any walls.
We're, so what we have to get to is code compliant. And we're gonna have trouble with getting to code compliant anyway with no bathrooms, with no
Yeah.
ADA compliant bathrooms.
Right, I mean, huge.
So that's a big pickle just the same. So you're gonna have to give back some space to find ADA compliant bathrooms, even in this strategy.
Yeah.
But in the 37 building and in the 58, 59 building, if you just do those and leave everything the same way it is, and don't touch the walls, and don't touch the bathrooms, and just deal with less bathrooms, then maybe you don't spend any money there except for utility ducting. And if you can run the plumbing through that, it's great. And if you can't, we just keep changing fixtures. So, but we have to have some idea of what this costs before we have some idea. If we did all that and then we said this costs, instead of $32 million, we get it down to $20 million. Let's just say, spitball number. Then then we ask, what does it cost to build a 9-room elementary classroom that goes with our strategic plan? Is that $30 million more dollars? And then we ask for $50 million, because they're gonna say no to $50 million.
But
So-
will they?
We don't know.
We don't know.
that.
We
So
don't
I
know,
completely
right?
agree with you that we need data, but I think we need
Right.
both we need
Yeah.
what it's gonna cost and what people are willing, because if we go through the needs assessment and it tells us again that it's money, we don't know if the town's actually gonna say yes to that, so we just spent more money on another needs assessment, not knowing what they're willing to spend.
Well,
Everybody that ever told me that they would say yes to a number said half.
so 40.
But
So,
we don't know for sure. I think that's what's
no,
hard. We have no
half of
information.
7.
30, 35.
But what was the cost of the building that they were talking about adding in the bus loop? Which
60
theoretically,
still.
The
It was
reduced
still,
one was 60 something.
but it was 60, but I think this is where the answer to that question, it was 60 with renovating this.
Right.
So
Yeah.
building a building
30-ish.
that's big enough to house the elementary. It might not hold all of the specials and stuff like that,
Mhm.
would be about 30-ish million, based on.
But that was next to the school. If we're talking about building a building that fits in a strategic plan,
Right.
it wouldn't be
No,
there.
it wouldn't be right there,
Right.
but.
We can't be there.
No, we wouldn't, we
Yeah.
didn't, I don't think we really ever.
I don't want to
went there.
continue the mistake.
But I think like that, my point is, that's how much
30-ish.
30-ish.
For that whole, how many,
Or when we talked about just adding an elementary up here,
Right.
it does make a lot more sense to
Yeah.
build for a strategic plan,
Yeah.
not connecting it.
right,
And do we have to build?
But you have an hour and a half wall. In
Yes.
between, or door.
Right, exactly, so
I
then
mean,
it's.
I'm wondering
figure
too,
everything right
all of
away.
those were like fully housing all of the elementary. We don't necessarily need that right now.
Right.
Like we talked about in the last meeting, it can be with a strategic plan, just enough to fit all the kids we want to fit. It doesn't have to house the entire elementary in a new building in 1 year.
Yeah.
So it could be less than
Right.
30
and then you build onto it. over
and build
time.
onto it over time,
It's
hopefully.
kind of like what you would call phasing it in.
Yeah.
And
My-
phasing out.
My question is, I love the idea of going to gather more information from the town. What I have heard from people is that their willingness to say yes to a number is dependent on what that number is being spent on. So I think we can go to the town and say, what are you comfortable with? But are we in a position where we can say, well, this is what we would be spending it on? I don't know that there's even consensus yet amongst. the-
I feel like that's a question for me. Like, I personally don't feel like this group necessarily is the ones to make that decision. It would be nice. I feel like the point of a community committee is like to gather information from as much of the community as you can. So if I was to talk to someone, that would be a question I would ask. What would you want this money to be spent on?
Right.
That makes sense, so it's a two-part question.
It's a
What are you
two-part
willing to
question.
spend on, and what would you like to see?
And what would you
being
like to spend it on? And I know that we're not gonna make everybody happy, of course, but.
Or any-
Or anybody, but, and we don't even have to listen, like, the board doesn't have to take the recommendation in the end, the board can make whatever decision they think makes the most sense financially. But it is helpful to have that information from as much of the different members of the community as you can. Of what they want to spend, what they want to see happen with the school, like that 50-year plan we talked about when Beth was here, what do you want to see this school look like in the future? I mean, I might have my own ideas, but I'm one member of the town, so it's nice to know what other people think.
And having
Yeah.
consistent questions, so it's not me saying, hey, I talked to this person and they said this, and
Yeah.
but I talked to this person and they said this, if we all ask the same questions and are gathering the same information, then we at least have some sort of data to go on. That's informal, but can consistently feed our.
I agree with that, and it would be good if we did inform them out there of our program. Meetings. Because that is what a lot of them probably have no idea, you know, what are constraints now for the educational program.
Yeah,
And we need to do work on that.
And I think jumping off of that, there's a lot of work done in looking at building a space for high school students. Katie, I remember it's one of the first things you said at one of those very first meetings, and that brings revenue. That brings money.
That could draw in others.
Exactly, and if we have facilities to support our programming that rival some of our private high schools,
Right.
that brings in funding. Hugely, and you know, I think it's a question more for the school board specifically, that are we talking about preschool? Because we know we haven't been able to hold preschoolers for the last 2 years, last year, this year. Probably not for a while, but we also don't make money. In fact, we lose money. There's a huge value in it, 100%, in feeding our school and being able to have those students and support those students and have early intervention.
So we in our planning, in 15 years in this school, I guarantee you we'll be having preschools. I can't guarantee we'll be having high school.
That's fair.
I guarantee you, every preschool student in this town is our responsibility to educate. I don't know what's gonna happen with high school. I'd like to say the high school's gonna stay open, I'd like to say it's gonna stay strong. But once you build buildings to try to generate revenue, and you generate such little revenue versus the building that you built, you're not making money.
Wait, part of that, and part of that building was having it be flexible, so say, we did talk about that, say the high school isn't there in 5 years. The building can be built in a flexible way that it can be used for something else, maybe at that point it's a community asset where we use it for something within the community, or it gets changed into.
middle school classrooms.
Yeah,
Middle
I
school.
mean, the middle school and upper elementary
Yeah,
be pretty conducive, it's when you get into early ed, that
yeah,
just design it differently, it's the sizing, I mean, that's
Yeah.
honestly, the sizing of the 1937 classrooms is.
Right.
Wrong,
Yeah,
antiquated, wrong.
so to Rob's point about sharing programming needs, you guys made this thing at the last meeting of like an inadequate space that is about programming. I mean, that's like a bullet point
That's
list
right.
I printed it out.
that you could share when you're talking with
That's
people.
what
That's what I got.
Yeah, so if you want, if you meet someone who hasn't been following along, then you can be like, let me
Yeah.
tell you what
Mhm.
some of the problems are, and then what do you think? This one doesn't say much about high school needs, but I think that's okay, if it's like the high school classrooms are working fine for them, it's more about gathering information from the people in the community of where do you see the high school in 15 or 20 years, and what would you like to invest in?
Yeah.
But that brings up a question. Do we get much, that augments our program around Danville Works grant program. Have we learned much from that we can bring on to our usual school?
So what we've learned, one of the things that we've learned is that there is a need in this region for hands-on learning programs for 9th and 10th graders. And
And
that's not
I
available.
going to do that? now?
They don't, they can't put it in.
Oh, okay.
They can't currently put it in, and so they're not allowed to do it legally. And so that, the need exists, and so it's possible to draw in students from choice towns
Yeah.
for 2 years to participate in our works program if we keep the programming going. But it's whether we keep the programming going.
And we can draw them in for 4 years and they can choose, because the tech programs that ally in the academy
Are
are
half
half partial day programs.
They're partial day programs.
So, I mean, we've got kids from Danville and kids that aren't from Danville that go to those programs.
Hmm.
But
So it's possible that the hands-on learning becomes a
So that
little.
would be great if that could be integrated into our program, because it is a draw. Right?
Yes,
It
yeah,
is a draw.
yeah, I don't foresee, but I think it's a funny question.
Yeah.
Every year when we look at the
It's
budget.
not sustainable.
It's three new, if they stay full, it's 3 new positions.
Zach is Maxfield's position.
Okay,
So
so two,
that's,
okay.
Culinary's a .6 position, which is new, and then, the Connect is a
The Connect.
position.
Mr. White.
Yeah.
So a position and a position and a half, a position and 2/3.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, every time, I said it the other day, every time we turn around, that budget goes up, and and then people, they say, just put more kids in the classroom and teach them with less people. That's what used to happen.
In terms of the revenue too, something I've always thought about is if. It may work now, it's questionable whether it is working now in terms of. The funding we get from tuition students. And then we're adding in capital expenditures and then the model changes.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting by now financially, we can make it work. When we're adding in these capital expenditures, everything changes and we're still only getting that 18,000 per student. We're not able to charge more. So at that point. The funding model changes.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
When you add capital costs, then the revenue that you generate on a number you can't change.
Right.
Makes the possibility that that's not tenable, and that's no longer economical
Mhm.
to have those students, and then you've spent that money.
Yeah,
Try to draw on those students that you don't make your money back on, and that's a perpetuating problem in the wrong direction.
Do you
And-
currently get more now from the tuition students than what it costs per
Yes.
student?
Yes, because they mostly sit in empty seats. They mostly fill out our sport teams and sit in seats that would otherwise be empty, in
Mhm.
class that we're already having.
Yeah.
And because they're in the building, we can offer more classes, because we can keep 1 or 2 extra high school teachers.
Mhm.
And then the revenue that they generate lowers our overall tax rate.
So the cost, I'm just looking at and I ignoring the tax rate for a moment.
Okay.
Just the total budget that you have and the number of students on average that you have. Is the cost per student, that those costs, is that more or less than what you're able to charge right now?
It's less. So, yeah, so like we make money on the kids, is that what you're?
Yeah, I'm not saying that you're not technically supposed to make money, on it, but
But.
yeah,
the
no, but
cost that
it's like,
every
it's not
person-
costing the town, like, the cost per student's like, not like 21,000 and you can only get 18,000.
Right.
That sort of thing.
And
That's it.
It's kind of like that.
yeah,
It's kind of like that.
yeah,
Oh.
because what's our rate for this, or what's our,
It's like,
it's
it's-
21.
your numbers are ballpark close,
Yeah.
is that we can't charge more than a certain amount,
Yeah,
and the state tells us that amount.
Yeah.
And then whatever that amount is, if they weren't there, we'd be getting 0 for them, and that seat would otherwise be empty.
Mhm.
And so it's like a bonus, it's like a bonus kid,
Yeah,
and so it's bonus revenue more than it's anything else, but it's like, if you wanted to delve deeply into the math and you wanted to say, like, get a pencil out on the top of the kid's head and decide what his value is, then that kid might not be a value add, because he's not an equalized pupil, it's just a pupil.
Mhm.
Because an equalized high school kid is worth more than a tuition high school kid. There's an equalized high school kid is worth 1.2 of a kid.
Okay.
And so an equalized high school kid, that's the value of educating a Danville kid in Danville. And then the lost value of educating a Danville kid that chooses to go somewhere else is a negative 1.2 children.
Yeah.
But when you bring in a tuition student, he's not an equalized pupil at all. He's just a dollar amount sitting in the chair. But and obviously he's a kid to educate, but in the terms you're asking, he's just a dollar amount. So he's not worth 1.2 of a kid, he's only worth dollars. And those dollars are less than 1.2 of a kid for sure, and they're probably less than 1.0 of a kid as well. But if you don't get those dollars, then for the last half decade, we're probably, our numbers are probably closer to Peacham's in terms of what our tuition would be per capita,
Mhm.
because we're knocking off that revenue.
Yeah, we plan on about 45 kids in our budget every year, 45 tuition kids, 7 through 12.
How many of it? Seven through 12?
7th grade through 12th grade, because we get.
Oh, right, you get some from,
Bunch.
yeah, okay.
So,
So some we get for 7 and 8, and then that's what they cost, and then a couple we're getting from some other, even some elementary kids, like a month, some kids for a month. And, but for whatever reason. So it's a way to keep costs down, but if you add in, but you have to have capital expenditures, and this has been, Molly, should bring this up just the very first minute that we talked about this, it says this is, if you add capital cost to these people, then that might cease to be economical, and then where you're chasing, you can't ever catch.
Right, you can't charge any more than what the state allows you to charge.
And that's, yeah, when we looked at, we had to build, forget.
Yeah.
That through everything.
but the difference is, and when we talk about that on the flip side, 2 private schools can. They can charge.
yeah.
So I live in ascending cap, and it's something near half our budget goes to pay for the kids that go to high school. And that's not all, just like, that's less than half the kids, for sure. And so that's the difference, is that they can charge a lot more, so we can't, you know, that gets back to the whole high school conversation, but. Yeah,
And their published tuition rate that they publish is not what they charge. That's the other thing, because they charge they charge a special ed rate, and they charge higher rates for this and that. So that's not actually what they charge, it's what they say they charge, and then that affects what our number looks like. Are you volunteering to sit at a booth? I am not volunteering to sit at a booth. I sit at enough booths.
I'm volunteering to talk to people. If somebody else would sit at the booth with me, I'd be willing to do something, not the whole, I'm not sitting
When
there
is
all day.
Danville Fair again, what's the date?
I don't know.
That's the first weekend in August.
What if we first come up with our questions that we're going to informally ask people?
Yep.
So do you guys want to become a subcommittee?
Well, I will do that with you if you all
Yeah.
want to do that.
Okay, so-
Rob and
I
Melissa.
think before you can present much to them that, and unless they know what they can get. I mean, if you throw numbers out, it's like, well, what am I getting?
Well,
for
I
that?
think it's good if we had really emphasized the program. You know, because the expense will be what it is eventually. But if we can get folks on board with, oh my gosh, you know, you can't do this for the kids because you haven't got a space. to
What
do
are we
that.
gonna write on our poster for our booth?
I
Programming
was
needs
thinking
for Danville
pamphlets,
schools?
you
Yeah.
can hand out
Right.
this
And
like-
like the questionnaire.
and
the
like a
survey.
little, yeah, or just ask the questions. Like,
I
What
think if
do
we
you know
start-
about your school?
If we start with the questions, I think we'll be able to
yeah,
figure out the information we really want, if
Yeah.
we start to.
I wanna know like what people want to invest their money
Yeah.
in, that's more
Me too,
interesting to me actually than what they're willing to spend, but what they're willing to spend is important also.
Yeah,
Okay,
really, maybe that could be a first step, is if we come up with a list of questions that we want to ask people. If anybody's willing to talk to 10 people over the summer, ask those questions, and we reconvene in September.
Yeah.
Even if we don't.
But
do
even
Danville
that
Fair.
would be more information than we have now.
Right.
Well, and to your point, a survey would be incredibly easy, to like, once you have the question,
really
the
easy,
surveys.
yeah.
Minutes.
Yeah. And even if nobody fills it out.
Or you
wasted-
get 35 people
3
who do
minutes of
fill
your
it
day,
out,
yeah.
that's 35 more
Yeah,
opinions than we had
We
before.
can do it on Google, there's Google Forms, I'd be
Yeah.
willing to just draft something.
it's really
and send
easy,
it
we can
and-
post it on Facebook,
To you, yeah.
Danville Vermont Community.
Yeah.
You probably get some people who are not from Danville who would fill it out, but.
There's ways to I'll have to look it up. There's ways to cross-check that too, so that people aren't duplicating or, submitting multiple
Yeah, I mean,
responses.
they can put an email address in there and then you'd be able, but then it would
Either
be
email-
anonymous.
Oh, I mean, but do you want it?
I mean, I don't want it anonymous, but would people be more than willing to fill it out if it was
Or what
anonymous?
if you could do a street name without names? What's your street address?
Yeah, maybe what's your street address? Yeah,
We're not identifying anybody with that, but it's like at least their street address.
make sure that you live in Danville.
You want to house?
Some road would be able to identify.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to think about that. That will be a big question is how do we
Yeah.
make sure they're.
But you could give, you could do the neighborhoods, you live in Danville, you live in West Danville, you live in, right,
Yeah,
you live in North Danville.
yeah,
You live in Howell.
yeah.
Have a secret preference that they.
People who don't.
And to
live here
prove you
really
live,
wanna spend
to prove you
time
live in
on the
Hollow,
survey.
right?
Because there'd be some kind of.
Wait, the road never gets served.
It's a trivia question only
Yeah.
Danville residents would know.
Yeah. There might be a way. There's ways
Yeah,
to do
we
it.
can
We'll
think
have to
about
figure
that,
it
but
out.
I think, I understand that people might not fill out a survey, but I'm willing to spend 5 minutes of my
Yeah, it
life
won't take that long.
making it. If people
So
are
everything
okay
you're
with
talking about can be done informally,
Yes.
and I think we can do that. Would you like to add to the agenda, go back and then put that on Mark on
About
Tuesday
the
night?
group?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's
that'd be great.
just throw it in his
That'd be
face, and we can do
great,
it.
Yeah, I think that would be good
We
for him
even
to look into
we
that.
do this.
Just to look into it and see, I'm dying here, I think, but,
DCEC used to do
it's
it.
NES, yeah, that
Yeah,
group.
so we'll look it up and then we'll do that.
Great.
Yeah, after, we'll put this to the superintendent, we'll say, get involved in this group, hopefully they can help us with these demographics. We'll listen to them.
And who wants to be involved in the community input surveying? I don't know, Melissa, do you want to be involved? You don't have to be, but would you want to be?
You can throw dates as options, it's
Okay.
just, it's crazy.
I don't even know if
I don't
we need
think
to
we need
meet.
to meet.
I mean, it could just be like
I'm happy to talk to people.
email
if-
chain.
If you're an email chain and she's in it, she's in it,
Hope to
don't
see
send anything,
you.
don't send anything to me.
Okay,
That would make
right,
it.
that would make a forum.
Only
Okay.
two.
Send anything to me.
Yeah.
You guys are free to talk to each other, you're free
Okay.
to talk to them informally,
Gotcha.
you then cannot speak to me or even forward me.
That's
emails.
helpful to know.
So that would violate open meeting.
What I could do is just start.
And then neither one of you either can chain that to me.
Yeah, if we start a draft.
So we
of
can't
survey
even talk to you
questions.
about it?
You would not then talk to me about it unless we met formally, because that would be 3 people having a chain meeting, which is a violation of open meeting.
But we can. have
Even
a
though we're
chain
talking
with
about it
two-
now.
We talk
We're talking about
it.
now in a meeting.
Yeah, it can come up then, the board meeting.
Yeah, you can bring it back to me in a
Okay, okay.
meeting. You can't bring it back to me privately,
On
because
the street,
then we're back in dealing conspiring.
Okay,
And you just imagine we were doing this about what
Yep.
we're gonna do to your kids in the classroom.
Okay.
The same sort of thing. It's a nefarious, it could be a nefarious thing, so you never allow it at any time.
gotcha, right,
So if you guys, if you're involved and you're involved, I then can't be. involved.
okay.
Yeah.
And then neither can David.
Right,
Yeah.
there's no,
Which they
there's no
didn't
danger of that. There's
Yeah.
no danger of that.
Yeah, Molly, I think if you want to just draft up some questions and send an email,
Send them
and then we
to
can
everybody.
just respond with
Yeah.
edits, and that could be really simple, and we do not have to
Yeah.
meet.
Yeah. I'll do some researching on the whole identifying part too, how to
Yeah.
do it, so it's, you know, they're not duplicates and all that, and.
And I think we make all of the questions required so that they're
Yes.
picking and choosing.
Yes,
Yes.
So that you
definitely.
have usable data.
And
You've done
short,
surveys with the
short
school
surveys.
committee, haven't you? Okay,
I don't know about the, I mean, yeah, check in with me, but I
Okay.
don't know so much about the. that
Question,
aspect, but
maybe that's a
okay.
question for you, Sarah. Would we be able to send the survey to, because you guys have like a list serve of all parent emails. Could we send it to you and you send it out to them?
Yeah.
Because that would be probably our most prime audience,
Right.
would be
Yeah.
people who have kids in the school.
That's not a board action, that's
Okay, so that's okay.
operational action.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
And could we send it to the committee and say, we're sending this out, but if you'd also be willing to talk
Share
to
it.
5 or 10 people informally, you can jot down and put in that.
you can't. Because if you send it to the committee, then there's 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5 on that email, and now you're conducting business.
Okay.
Unless that was.
But you could then hand it out to individuals,
Right,
You could ask.
like to Mary or.
Individuals, but you can't chain in.
but you
board.
send agendas to all of us,
That's meeting planning,
meeting planning.
that
Alright.
falls under meeting planning.
You
and
can leave us off and send a message to all of the committee members, and leaving the board members
How am
off,
I gonna find out without you telling me?
what?
You guys are in a group.
So is it easier if I am not directly involved?
No, great, I I've got
He
four,
doesn't
meetings-
want to be
I've
involved.
got four school board related meetings next week. I've got, I got 9 hours of stuff to do. I
I'm
have,
not suggesting so that you.
No,
Yeah,
I don't-
I'm saying to make it so we can talk, so that you can be.
I don't know.
Is it, what if like you created the survey and like just Molly sent it to the rest of the committee
Right.
to say, here's some questions that we came up with. If you see people
Right.
around and are willing to ask them that, is that okay?
And I
Like,
just had Melissa on it and not.
Not-
Tim and Dave.
Yeah,
That
it's the
should work.
board members that are the.
does that
issue.
work?
The board
I-
members
can-
were the issue.
It can be FYI only, but it
Okay.
can't be within a discussion. Or you could, like, you can't then invite discussion back.
I can say, hey,
Just
FYI,
FYI,
FYI
we're
only,
doing
please
this.
don't respond.
Okay.
I am authorized to do this. I'm the subcommittee of this committee. Do not respond.
and then I could have the board members
Yeah,
on there.
in that
All right.
case,
yeah, just informational.
you can't open
Thing,
a dialogue.
the
and-
survey,
but
Please
When
don't
you do,
respond.
when you do this to people that aren't
gotcha,
used to open meeting law, you tend to get a lot of replies to all.
and that's not good.
And then once you get replies to all, then you've got a chain open of the committee.
But they could respond just to me if I send it. All right,
Okay.
So that's, you have to just be really cognizant of that.
all right.
And that's the only thing is with just open meeting law. They just get hammered in.
Yeah.
They just, it's, I think,
Yeah, no, it's good.
So.
Good to be legal.
Yeah, yeah,
It would be nice to currently be. Not to change the subject, but it would be super cool if we currently had all our ducks in a row. Okay, so we'll schedule a meeting in September. I think once we have information to pass along, we're able to rally this group back to a larger area. I think we're gonna have to get some real data and some real numbers again.
Yeah.
Based on what we know from sort of more what we know about this group is that we can't spend this much money. We need to know more about what we're gonna do. And I don't think that Sean can get us the numbers. I don't think that's a reasonable ask.
Yeah,
What's
I
the-
think
what's the
you
number
need-
gonna cost? I think that's a tough
Yeah,
thing for you to try to, that's sort of out of your.
you'd have to pay a lot of money to get the answer to that question.
Yeah, that's a $1,000 question, not a, what are you doing later tonight? Just make a drawing.
Yeah, I think it would be good if you brought in a professional estimator that would interact with the engineers and the architects. So it would probably be under the architects, and it would probably be very specific what that scope is, so. So we'd have to get that worked out.
Right, that might end up being a separate special meeting with Sean and with Rob and myself and the superintendent and the architects to start out with, or something like that. So we
Yeah.
have a better idea what we're gonna do, but that would be later.
Mhm.
Do we know what it would cost to bring them back to do a needs assessment? I mean, I think you threw.
The original
$20,000
cost for a needs assessment that was being talked about was about $16,000, but then once they started, they said, we can draw you these plans, and then it escalated from there. But the original cost was something in the neighborhood, then this was 2018, $16,000, it might cost $25,000 now, I don't know.
I gotta imagine it would take less. They've been here, they've seen it.
That's
so-
why you have to go back to the.
So that's, just-
Right.
they have a lot of information.
Right,
They-
right.
That's what you have to do, you've already got the baseline stuff,
I
so
agree.
it's hopefully less than $16,000, but we're gonna need it anyway, at some point. So I think that's one of the pathways for going, to spend more money on them.
One thing we talked about is a list of itemized prices for that 32 million make good cost. So we don't have that. We don't have the
Well, the
breakdown.
estimator probably does,
Yeah,
but again, his estimates are based on a generic condition.
right.
They aren't kind of based on, well, don't demolish that wall, but put that on that wall instead, and you know, that kind of stuff.
So I wonder if they take Sean's list and give us a price for Sean's list with what they, information that they
His
have.
list doesn't get us the code. So he
Right.
could, his list doesn't get us the code.
Right.
So, that's just his most immediate needs, and there's the parking lot on it, and that wouldn't, that's, if we're doing code, that's not gonna get there. It's that same bumpy parking lot for the rest of our lives. But, yeah, it's, that, their list would have to include getting us all the way to code more than anything else, and then the bathrooms are. It's $10 million for bathrooms, no matter what we do. $10 million for bathrooms.
And it would be a good after we get an idea what to do with the master plan. To kind of look at what the next structure would be, and then we can involve the design team.
Right.
And then we can get an estimate that would reflect just that much of the rate.
Yeah.
And that's the fall.
Okay. That's where we are. So I think we can adjourn for the night if there's no public input. Hearing none.
And you meet again next,
Next Tuesday, Tuesday is gonna be with basically our July meeting. And we're gonna see if we have any information. Dave's gonna be there, so it'd be great if you were
I
there.
want to be there.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I didn't need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Take it. Expecting.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor? 7:06.